selfish, unselfish, and selfless actions, the three types of actions. We've primarily said selfish and unselfish actions are those which are undertaken with a specific fruit in mind. These actions are done as an end in itself, but selfless actions are those which are undertaken as a means to an end. The means, the action becomes the means, the end is the ultimate, the highest goal of self-realization. Now, we define selfless actions as desireless actions, as motiveless actions. So there's no intention or a desire backing the performance of that action. We term such actions as the crown of all actions. It is the pinnacle. It takes you to the highest goal. It is in fact, you could call that action as a truly spiritual action, an action which is truly liberating. Now, what you may have to understand, all of us have a percentage of certain actions. Okay. Ashrama wants to clarify something. Yes, please, ma'am.
Pranam Guruji.
Namaskar. Yes, ma'am.
When we talk of actions, selfish, unselfish, and selfless action, we should remember one thing, that whatever we do, we are only an instrument through what is happening. There's a Urdu couplet that says, कोई इंसान किसी इंसान को क्या देता है, आदमी फकत बहाना है, खुदा देता है. I am only an instrument through whom this act is being performed. I do not have the capacity to give or to do or to share with anybody. I'm only an instrument in the hands of God.
That's so nice. Yeah, very beautiful. You should come up with a booklet of all these.
No, there are only these 2-3 which our father used to repeat. And there was another 2 lines to this. वो अगर जहर भी दे तो करूं शुक्र अदा, कोई अपना ही समझ के तो सजा देता है. If God punishes me for something, I should be grateful because God considers me his own child, and that is why he has punished me, has reprimanded me.
It's so divinely intoxicating. I just pause for a moment because I don't know the words to describe it. You know, it is, if you allow your thoughts to run in these poetic, license a poet has to describe the how to attune to the providence or the Almighty. I tell you, it is very touching. It is indeed very touching. Thanks, Ma. Really appreciate that. So I was saying that the 3 types of actions, the selfish, unselfish, and the selfless actions, when we assess our own personality, every individual has a certain percentage of these Nobody is entirely selfish. Very rarely are people fall in the category they perform 100% selfless actions. So it's important for you to just find out what percentage of your actions are of a selfish nature, what percentage of your actions are an unselfish nature, and what is it that have selfless aspect to it. Now, when you perform selfish actions, apart from what the verse says that you accrue demerit, what selfish actions do? 2, 3 points you may have to keep in mind. That when you perform a selfish action, it strengthens the existing desire upon which you have acted upon. When you have acted on a desire, it gives strength to that desire. So it is reinforcing that thought, reinforcing that desire. Second point, you create fresh desires, you create fresh such selfish thoughts. It creates an opportunity or an environment or a conduciveness for new selfish thoughts and desires to breed. Thirdly, any selfish action has a consequence of you accruing demerit. As we said, you accrue papam, which is you experience sin, and that is proportionate to the degree of your selfishness or self-centeredness. It's directly proportional. If you have 5% selfishness in an action, to that extent, that 5% selfishness creates Hariji, could you just ensure that people can't unmute themselves? I think. In the process, I was also unmuted, you know. Right now you can hear me. So let's say it's important to be in the good books of the host, you know. So to the extent there is that percentage of selfishness, to that extent one incurs a sinful reaction. There is a sense of guilt, the sense of ego. To the extent there is an ego involved in the action, there is that friction, there is that agitation, there is that conflict with the world. All of that is known as demerit. Demerit is just not the mental state, is the hellish experience that you go through. And there is a percentage element. Now, to the extent you perform unselfish actions also, first point, it strengthens further the desires to do such acts. It generates, it strengthens the existing desires. Second, it generates new unselfish desires to do such acts. Thirdly, it creates a punya. Punya means you go through a heavenly experience. Now you must understand, even that is only a temporary experience. You go through a heavenly state where you find you are in a state of bliss or joy or happiness. You believe yourselves to be in a la la land, you know, everything is going so well for you, you know. I don't know if there's something called a la la land. If there's no such land, imagine a land where you have a heavenly experience. And now what you got to note is both selfish and unselfish actions both are binding. Binding. Both these actions actually bind you to the world. Even the highest unselfish action will bind you to the world. And in terms of spiritual evolution, you are not any closer to God, because the description of state of God realization is, how do you describe getting closer to God in the context? How do you measure your growth, spiritual growth in the context? Because you can describe that spiritual evolution in many ways, but in the context, how do you describe spiritual growth? And I got to be very alert to answer the question. If you, even for a split second, you have lost your alertness, you will lose your focus. It's like taking your concentration off your highway when you're 70 miles an hour. Take your concentration for a split second, you had it. For a split second is enough. RPG, we'll see how alert you are.
Hari Om Guruji.
Yes, sir. Hari Om, sir.
How are you? So
it will depend on the answers I receive.
I know, it's all or nothing. I know. This is like a game show.
Yeah, it is.
You come on, you have to spin the thing, and if you don't hit the number, then you go to the next poor victim, Hirenbei or Shuni. They're all tense right now. They're hoping the guy before them gets the right answer, so then they don't get called.
Till now, they were thinking, thank God this one didn't ask any question,
No? Just like Socrates.
Yeah.
So I think it's a couple of things. The thing that, the individual that's unbound, not tethered, right? So this thought or concept of vasanaless or desirelessness, right? They have that's their state. So every action that they undertake is done without any thought of desire, without any creation of any new desire. They are completely doing it out of a sense of obligation, untethered to the outcome. And what they're also not necessarily concerned with is the outcome. So they are no longer bound by the dvandvas or the positive or negative. It doesn't matter. They are merely undertaking that activity because they're obligated to do so, and because they're either self-realized or they're very close to that. Anything doesn't bind them further to the world.
Mm-hmm. So, in fact, you actually been spot on that when you first said that state of self-realization, if it is described as a state as vasana-lessness or desirelessness, if that is the ultimate goal, so spiritual evolution would be measured by reduction in the desires, quantity. Yeah. I'm not specifically mentioning quality here. Quantity. If you want to add quality, you add quality as well. But what we must understand is, if I have 100,000 vasanas, vis-a-vis I have 50,000 vasanas. A person who has got 50,000 vasanas is much closer to the self than 100,000 vasanas. It's like if I have to drive 400 miles vis-a-vis 200 miles, I'm much closer to my destination than being 200 miles further away. So Therefore, if you go by the points we said, selfish and unselfish actions create new impressions, it create fresh desires. You could be doing great unselfish work, but in the process, what you have done is you have acquired more such desires. So actually, you are not really spiritually evolving. You are a great noble soul, but in terms of closer to the self, you may not be, because you're not actually got rid of your unselfish desires. You're actually creating more desires to serve the people, to uplift them, to relieve their suffering. You're doing so much, but it's all desire prompted, so it creates more desires. Therefore, we said such actions are binding. They still bind you to the world. They're still worldly actions. But a selfless action is considered as an act which liberates you. That's the only action which liberates you, which takes you closer to the self. So how does it matter whether you're bound by whether you're shackled by an iron chain or a gold chain? I'm still shackled, no? You tie me with a gold chain or an iron chain, I'm still bound. I don't have the freedom. Many don't understand this difference. But then you may ask me, sir, then how do I get to selfless actions? If selfless actions are liberating, and if selfish and unselfish are binding, how do I get from where I am to that selfless state? Shouldn't that be a pertinent question? How do I get to that state where I perform actions which are liberating? Sriniji, now it's your turn.
Yeah, that is the right question. Pranam, Guruji. That is the right question to ask. I think
always I ask, why do you qualify now? Have I ever asked a wrong question?
I don't know. I can't make a judgment on that.
Better watch out what you better watch out what you're saying, huh? No. But it's important. It's important we have these essential questions clarified, otherwise we don't justify the whole inquiry.
My belief is that the way you would get there is the toggle between the mind and the intellect. So the more, I think, the intellect seeks pure wisdom, then you start understanding that these are much baser requirements versus the eternal selflessness. And that's how you transcend, is what I feel.
You're bringing in, another element into the equation without approaching it from that perspective, just going with what we have discussed. How do you
yeah. Well, then, if I very simplistically look at it, I think people migrate with a balance of first selfish actions and unselfish actions. And the more you migrate towards unselfish, then you start realizing these are all, as you said, tie you still to the world. And you're still bound by vasanas and desires. And you start fulfilling them, and then you realize, well, it is really still not fulfilling comprehensively. And that's when I think you start saying, let's detach it, is what I feel. That's how you get a self-realization.
Yes, in fact, you're right. So the only way you move from where we are to selfless actions is by changing the proportion of selfishness to unselfishness.
Yeah.
Unselfishness is the means to get to selflessness. You can't jump from selfish to selfless, impossible. Yes,
so I have a question. I mean, I was thinking about it last week after you said it. Is this got to do with age? So as you're younger, you seem to have more selfish actions. You know, you're a child. You say, hey, I want that, like you said, the toy, right? Or whatever the desires. So you're still bound to that. And it feels like as you mature, or maybe you've been satiated with those selfish desires, you start balancing to unselfish desires, which is beyond yourself. It's one extended outside of yourself, like family or whatever. Is that more age related than anything else?
I would think, in fact, it has got nothing to do with age. It is to do with your spiritual age, though age, but not physical age, but spiritual age. When one has spiritually matured and evolved, then they're able to identify with a larger interest than their own personal, selfish, egoistic interest. You know, because selfish actions are the base level actions where one is not, that's a sign of their lack of spiritual maturity. So as one is mature, you don't stoop down to that gross levels. You obviously have a certain flavor, which is very sacrificial. And it is through evolution you reach that state. So, and that could blossom from a very young age, because you're born with this, as we understood not long ago, that when you're born, you carry forward that proportion. So let's say if I die in this embodiment, that I perform 60% selfless actions, but there is 30% unselfish and 10% selfish. This is exactly the proportion I'll carry forward from next Janma. It's not that I'll start from zero. Huh? So I'll start from 60% selfless, 30% unselfish, 10% selfish. So this is my proportion. So when I'm born with, so whatever I'm doing, I bring this nature into my field of work. I can be a carpenter next birth. I can be a singer. I can be an Urdu poet. Thanks to Ashama, maybe I'm entertaining a new desire. I want to be a Urdu poet next birth. You see, so don't know, you know. So whatever it could be, the thing that would influence the proportion. So it's not the physical age at all, not at all. In fact, have we not seen great prodigies, great men? You know, at a very young age, they had such detachment to the world. You know, it's not defined by age, sir. Not at all.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Yes, Ramanji.
Guruji, in this context, Hari Om, Guruji, in this context,
Yes,
I want to say Ramana Maharishi had one assistant called Mastan. Mastan was making his he was a weaver, and he used to make only kopinam. That was only job. He never used to work for anyone. And ultimately, he got self-realization. He was a Jivan Mukti. He used to do only that, and later Ramana Maharishi advised him to totally be in tapas, and he ultimately achieved. So, a weaver, when you were saying you can be born anyway. So he was just a weaver, and he was a Muslim, and he was a devotee of him, and later he became a self-realized soul. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So it really doesn't matter what you do, as long as your action the intent behind that is purified to an extent. There is no residue of any motive. So motiveless actions are liberating. As long as you are able to take that motive out of the equation, you're closer to selflessness. Okay. Yes, Vijayji.
Pranam Guruji.
Yes, sir.
I was thinking, I mean, I still was not very clear about as to how to transition from unselfish to selfless, you know. I mean, I'm thinking aloud in the sense when we come from selfish actions to unselfish actions, we go a little higher, but then it always is resulting in a sense of happiness, satisfaction, or whatever, which still is got a certain sense of emotions are invoked by doing that. Now, if we start doing more and more of unselfish acts, I think eventually you get used to it and it becomes a second nature, and your life gets occupied, and then you stop looking for any sense of satisfaction because this is what you're doing all the time. I mean, other than that, I don't see how I can physically as an individual transition from unselfish to selfless. I mean, how do I say that this is going to be an selfless act? I mean, it should become a second nature. My life must be full of it. I mean, without anything, and I must get used to it. I mean, the point I'm making is sort of
unless situations like this, a guru comes into your life and gives a knock and says, go beyond unselfish, man, gives you an iota of an opportunity to conceive that there is a selfless thing. Unselfish also is binding. He plants another thought or a bug into you and let that thought multiply, and you start seeing, hey, why should I have this motive at all? I can carry on doing it, but I can still do it without a motive, isn't it? Sir, as long as you understand that the motive is something I am creating, that doesn't hamper or that doesn't impede in the performance of my action. You see, the same work, I took the example last week, the work I'm doing right now, teaching this dharma, teaching this Sanatana dharma to you all, I can be doing it for a selfish intent. It could be done for an unselfish intent. It could be done without any obvious motive there. I could be only doing this. This act takes me to self-realization. It helps me evolve. It helps me unfold myself. Nothing other than that. Why can I not embrace a purer motive? What is holding me back? Would the act hold me back? It is my inability to conceive, isn't it, sir? So it's just like, if I can just give an example, a sportsman has a talent. A coach comes into his life and realizes this guy has a potential. He is just trying to groom, he's just trying to make him believe that he has in him to reach the top level. He's just trying to make him believe that you have the potential, you have the talent, you have the capacity. It just makes him believe that you can not just play the national, you can play the international level, man. You have that capacity. So it's just that thought, plants that thought, creates that possibility. And all this satsang is doing is, it plants that thought that there is not everything right in just getting bound to an unselfish or stagnating at a certain level. You've got to raise the bar right up to the selflessness. That is the true beauty and grandeur of an action, which is to reach that selfless state. So it's that possibility which this knowledge gives us. It constantly gives the opportunity to revisit and reprogram. So are you not downloading every now and then you get a notification that there is a software update in your phone? Why is it? It's an improvement. You will not be wanting to use the same software you bought the phone 3 years ago. You would not want to be not updating. If you don't do, one by one, each app will stop functioning in the phone. A point of time will come, the phone itself becomes, it will say, if you don't update, you can't operate. Isn't it, sir? Something like that. We can't, the only purpose of our life is to keep flowing like the rivers. The moment that fresh water, which seems to be flowing, stagnates, it starts smelling foul. So even unselfish actions, if you don't allow it to grow, if you don't go beyond it, it goes against your own growth. Yes, Ji.
The biggest, still, I mean, I'm not still clear about how do I remove motive out of the action. Unless I sort of, I mean, to use a slang, Unless I psycho myself to do it again and again and again, it becomes, automatic.
No, it's a certain thought process. That's about all. It's a thought process. If I can do, so the motive is what? It's for what you're doing, isn't it? It's just for what? So if I can plant the thought of self-realization into you, and if that goal can inspire you. So when in the initial journey, self-realization was just a term. It's something we all got fascinated with. Oh, what is this self-realization? What is this God realization? But then it started unfolding. It's like a flower which starts blooming, and then it just reveals that inner beauty. And then once the flower has blossomed, you find it is majestic. Now, exactly the same way, the thought and ability to attune to realization has actually blossomed so beautifully in the ability to conceive it, that has fascinated your pursuit further. It becomes almost the sole objective of your life. But it could be in a budding stage. You should allow it to blossom. In time and reflection and sadhana will ensure that it starts resonating with you, Okay. In fact, Ramatirtha has the same problem as you had. So you can be put in the same caliber, sir. Ramatirtha also said, he also said, I can't understand, why do you fellows have motives? And you're asking, how is it not to have a motive? The only thing is standpoint difference. Why do you fellows carry motives to action? Why can't you perform an action for the sake of performing? Why do you have to have an appendage to it? Why do you have to clip something onto it? Just be pure and do an act for the sake of doing. Yes, sir.
Guruji, sorry to extend this, sir.
No problem.
It
Please.
creates a fresh confusion. If I cannot have a motive and have an action, how do I make sure that I do it good intentions, or a good thing or a bad thing? Good intentions is the wrong word. A good thing to others or a bad thing to others. See, if there is a motive, there is no value addition to the external world. There are no, addition to the external world. There's some kind of this thing, impact on the external world.
If I can go back to, yeah, I got what you're getting at, so I'm just interrupting you. I'm sorry for that. Because there no further explanation required, because I got what you're asking. Is going back to what Sriniji said earlier, whether you're operating on the mind or the intellect. So when you operate selflessly, your actions are 100% driven on the intellect. Thereafter, it is your obligation. What is my duty? What is my obligation? It's like, let's say, I don't know whether you've ever seen, we may not have gone to the wild, but I'm sure we all have noticed at times, there is a bird that has caught hold of a lizard or a chameleon, and it starts eating. And the little innocent lizard is actually alive as the bird starts picking it and eating it. Now, what is my role there? What is my dharma? What is my duty? Am I to protect that lizard or deprive the bird of its meal? There are moments where you don't know what your obligation is. You just stand apart and watch and say, that's nature. I do nothing. Other than that, in fact, a lot of these wildlife photographers have this predicament. They have this little fawn being torn by a pack of lions or a pack of wild dogs. It's literally tearing up a little newborn fawn, and all it takes is to shoo them away, and the innocent little one life is spared. But then we say, who am I to play the God's role here? Whose side am I taking? Am I taking the side of the herbivore or the carnivore? I do nothing. I just capture it, and very difficultly, very objectively, they have to continue filming so that you and I can watch that scene unfolds for us to see from our comfort zone. But Those are certain movements you don't know what to do, but otherwise your intellect clearly tells you what to do, what not to do. In fact, this is the trademark of sattvic intellect. Please fall back on that specific verse. Rajima shared that context of that personality chart, or that from 18th chapter we talk about. The sattvic intellect clearly says what to do, what not to do. That is a trademark of a sattvic intellect. So once you have that fully developed intellect with wisdom, the sattvic intellect, you know what is my dharma, what is not my dharma, what is my duty. It is not my duty. It's not my prerogative. I will not get into it. So all your actions are 100% in the interest of others. So obviously the ego is completely liquidated, isn't it? There is no ego at all. So you're all duty-bound actions. Okay, Ji?
So sattvic intellect becomes a kind of a precondition or a desirable precondition to be able to have a selfless action. Otherwise, I might tend to become, I mean, sorry to use the word amoral. I mean, what is right and what is wrong becomes very relative. I mean, my intellect, to the extent my intellect is developed, I may do things and by my perspective or my intellect's perspective. So a certain guideline or a certain boundary has to be laid down within myself before I start becoming totally, motiveless and selfless.
Even if you want to do unselfish, you need to use intellect. If you want to be of service to people, you must apply yourself. It's a very conscious act. It's just not a passive, impulsive act of just parting with something because you have it with you and you have nothing to do with it. Oh, this desk has been lying there and occupying space, collecting dust, useless. Let me give it away. And you give it away and then you say, I've been very unselfish. You've got rid of rubbish from the house. That's not unselfish. Don't try to act smart. In that sense, you can't use that to justify an unselfish act. Even to do an unselfish act, you need to have a very conscious driven action. So it's like, what is a steering to a car is an intellect to an action. It's understood. When you buy a car, it comes with a steering. So when you perform an action, it has to come with an intellect. If you want to steer your action to the destination, it has to be intellect driven. Otherwise, imagine a drunkard driving is acting on the mind and impulses. A sober driver is an actions driven by the intellect. So you're right that intellect embellished with this wisdom is sattvic. And it's interesting for you to note what is rajasic intellect, tamasic intellect. It's fabulous. And by that you would know whether how much of your intellect is sattvic proportion, rajasic and tamasic. So then you look back and say, oh my God, what am I doing? You get what I'm saying? Okay, right. I know a few of them have been raising hands. I'll come one by one. Hariji, you'll have to put your hand down. I'll come to you. Yes, Hirenji, I know you've been wanting, I think even Vaidyanathanji wanted to say something. I'll come to you, sir.
Okay, I had a question at the beginning to tell you that is it possible that when we are in the ladder of unselfishness, one time you explained that in my mind, somebody dying in the war, selfless, but that was still not selfless. You said that is the highest level, probably could be of unselfishness. So that is in the ladder. At that point, now you clarified that our baseline has to be kind of in a swatic mode, which is becoming very important, becoming important. At that point, could I say that if you completely surrender to the providence, right? Everything what we do in a swatic mode, highest mode, and then at that point, we say that it is a complete surrendering to God or providence or whatever we believe in there. Does it make it easier for people to get there, or I don't know?
See, when you talk of surrender, surrender is an element of an aspect of devotion. Surrender also comes in when there is an element of helplessness.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening, you know. मैं खुदा के ऊपर छोड़ देता हूँ. I leave it to God. Let Him decide what is right for me. Who am I? You know, what can I do? It's a sign. It's like somebody is in the hospital, you know, and you have done everything possible, getting the best possible attention and the right time you've taken to them, but the doctor comes back and says, you know, I think the person is critical, you know, and he needs attention. Pray that everything goes well. We're also praying everything goes well. We're doing our best. You have done everything. There's nothing more you can do. The best doctors, right medicine, is the right place, the right hands. Thereafter, you just fold your palms and bow down to that Almighty and say, please, not that personal prayer gets answered or anything. It's just an attitude of surrender. You are helpless thereafter. You can't do anything more. So surrender invariably comes in, kicks into force when you have done your part.
Okay.
And you're helpless. You say, Sharanagati. Like Draupadi, she was holding on to that last piece of robe on her when Duryodhana and cousins were actually derobing her in the parliament. In the open sabha, they were derobing her. She held on. And then she said, I can't hold on anymore. And she let go. At that point, when she completely surrendered, let go of that robe, that's when Lord Krishna supported her. So surrender is an integral part in any sadhana, because opposite of surrender is ahankar. I know what it is. I can do it. That kind of an attitude. But I'm not blowing hot and cold, but surrender has to have, in fact, has an element which is encompassing every action. You do your part with the spirit of surrender.
Okay.
Like you plant a seed, you take care of your garden. You do your part, isn't it? You make sure the soil is conducive. You plant the right seed. You make sure you give it the necessary nurturing and nourishment. Thereafter, you say He knows what it needs better than a man like me. It is Lord's creature. It's His creation. He who knows what it needs. So thereafter, you say, I continue to do my part, but here we're talking about a conscious effort, you know. As we not learn, God helps those who help themselves. Why don't put in the effort? No, God is going to come and help me, protect me. I got to do my tapas. Somebody used the word tapas. So you got to do your sadhana. That's when you get the fruits of your efforts. But then you don't arrogate that fruits to yourself. It says it's all divine providence.
Yes.
So much has to go my way for me to do my part. Yeah. So if I have to do my sadhana, I have to have my family supporting. I must say my family was supportive. The day I had taken a decision to plunge into this pursuit, my family was supportive. From 30 years on, I'm saying when it started. In fact, I remember this very, very vividly. And I'm just being grateful to that. You know, we don't do anything for a living. We only survive on bhiksha, dakshina. So there is no means of livelihood for ourselves. And yet I'm plunged into it full time only to serve this knowledge. And my father, when he realized that after I got to the ashram and I got back, he realized that this boy is had such a fervor. Almost he knew that I had a fever for this, in the right sense, the fever to serve and get involved in this knowledge. And I remember these words he was saying. He was working as an aeronautical engineer, very sincere. He was doing his work. He said, I want to ensure that you have a basic roof over your head, you have basic facilities, the rest of your life, you will not have to be deprived of so that you can continue your sadhana. And he said that when I was just in my early 20s, he said, I want to ensure that there is a roof over your head, you have the basic needs can be met so that tomorrow you don't have to think of your bread and butter. So your sadhana can continue. And my sincere prostrations to him for the thought he had. Which father would say that he is working hard to take care that the rest of my life I don't have to work for my bread and butter? You may say every father will do that. Every parent has attachment to their children, but I didn't think he looked at it from that perspective. He may have an attachment to me, understandable, but for him to have nurtured that thought for me that I know you want to work for this and I want to ensure you have basic things. No. So if my family has not supported, the lady whom I married, she has to be supportive. The family has to be supportive to me. So am I not grateful? Should I not surrender to the force beyond me, which is enabling me for me to just do my sadhana? I am not resourceful for the family, but the family goes to that extent to ensure that my sadhana continues. So nothing becomes a thorn in my pursuit. Isn't that divine providence? I go back home, there's a meal to eat. I go back home, there's a place where I can go back. I call it a home. Not now. I'm saying when it all started. I came back from the ashram. My room was exactly made like how my ashram room was, where I studied. Father went to the extent that this boy would need these basic things. He prepared it. So if I can go into the detail, it might sound personalized. I'm not trying to highlight anything here, but I'm only trying to tell what is it to have that spirit of surrender and gratefulness, without which you cannot, I cease to exist without identifying with the totality. Even now, this institution is serving you. Do you know how much effort goes into just set up this class for you? You're not aware. I'm not trying to highlight anything. Just to make sure that there is this facility. There is this banner. Other day, we had to scratch our heads just to get clarity on how do we set up. We are working on a particular project of a website and how much effort is going in just to get that going. Somebody is applying themselves. Somebody is clocking in their hours, time, energy, resources to make it happen so that you are benefited. Should I not be grateful to that? Should you not be grateful to that? You should. It's just not this 1 hour you sit and I sit where I am and then it comes and begins and ends. No. The moment even before it begins, somebody is planning which bhajans to play, how many minutes to play. Have you ever noticed a bhajan running into 5:32 in the morning Indian time? 5:30 sharp, the bhajan end. Somebody is planning. If I play 4 bhajans, how much time those bhajans take? Somebody is planning so that the class starts on time. Somebody gets up to make sure that they share the slideshow, but they may not be available for the class. Somebody does that. I have to be grateful for that. I can go into insignificant, means so many things. It becomes almost, what am I doing? This is how you liquidate your ego. The ego becomes insignificant. This is what is surrender. And every moment, every step, every walk of the way, I am nothing. God is enabling it to happen through mysterious ways and means. So many hands are playing right now for this insignificant act. You don't have to be falsely modest also. Just do what if I go about doing what I have to do, everything will happen. This is being selfless, Vijayji. Why should I carry a motive? Just let me do what I have to do. If my job is to teach, if I just teach and if I do it to the purest form, everything shall happen. It will happen. Why should I bring in my motives into it? And so if you extend it that way, surrender, bhakti and karma and jnanam all are integrated. It is integrated. So perhaps I started with one breath and I ended with another breath, not contradicting, but it's the same thing. It's only a different standpoint how you look at it. First I said surrender is bhakti, and then I said bhakti and jnanam and karma one and the same. I'm not contradicting, sir. But I ultimately I'd ask you, does it answer your question? I might have said many things, you know. All right, you get the point? Right. Vaidyanathanji.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Harinji. Perfect.
In the last class, we discussed and agreed that, or rather you said that self-realized person, there is no binding, there's no karma that is attaches to him. And therefore we said that selfless action is possible only by self-realized person, because selfless action results in no binding, no attachments that keeps you down. So that was one point I wanted to bring out today, was that selfless action is possible by a self-realized person. But
Not
then,
at all. No.
Huh?
If I could, before we go further, could I clarify here, sir?
Please.
No,
That's what I
no.
understood last time.
No. Selfless actions lead you to self-realization. It's not that a self-realized soul performs selfless actions. No, it's other way around, actually.
Okay.
So when you perform selfless actions, it knocks off the existing desires. It doesn't create fresh desires. And you're burning off the existing vasanas.
If I am doing any unselfish action to make it selfless, I simply have to tell my Ishtadevata that I am not doing this. You are the doer. I am only an instrument of this action. And I thank you for selecting me for executing this one. Whether I'm helping somebody, feeding somebody, I'm just dedicating this to the creator. I'm saying, you are playing the Leela. You're using me as a medium to get this task done. I am not doing it. Would that not be a selfless action? When I dedicate that and then do the task, whether I give 1 lakh for pouring the feeding the poor, or any help that I do, first I say, you are the doer. I am the medium you've chosen, fortunately this time. I thank you. Please choose selecting me every time, and I do the task. That would be a selfless task action.
No, it could very much be. It can very much be, but only what you got to find out is there any residue of I and my involved in it. If it's 100% the higher and there is 0% existence of Vaidyanathan in it, or Vaidyanathan's ego involved in it, it is selfless action, because selfless actions are egoless actions. It's like a child doing something innocently, ignorantly, unwillingly. He just not conscious of it, just does something. So there is no ego at all. So if you take it that way, it is so.
Right.
Okay.
I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, but see, one of the important points in selfless actions is choosing an action based on your obligation. So when something knocks at your door, or when so much is happening out there, rather take the second half of the statement. When so much is happening out there, what do I do? What is my obligation? I'm involved into serving this Sanatana Dharma, this truth, this wisdom. What obligation I have to the pandemic that's going on? It's not the question whether I have the resources or not, or can I be resourceful to that cause or not. Perhaps I could be resourceful. If I identify a cause and let's say I tap all my sources and generate and chip in what I could to help a cause, I could be doing that without even being mindful. Is it my obligatory duty? Am I obliged to do it? Is it my dharma? If it's not my obligation, I'll say I'll not pick up something else, because I'm getting into a field which is not my duty. Don't mistake her. I'm only trying to tell you, you do what your dharma is. What is your obligatory duty? So if I have no direct obligation, so many people are suffering now, let's say in Bangladesh. So many people are suffering because of war in Palestine and Israel. Why are you not supporting them? You may say, they are suffering. I'm very sorry for that, but I'm not in any way obligated. Wouldn't you say that? So therefore, one of the main criteria to embarking on selfless action, where what action to pick up is, it is my duty or not. And having entered an action which is your duty, you don't entertain any motive. Two factors: to choose an action based on your duty, and having entered, you don't entertain any further motive in that act. I could be doing my obligatory duty, but then I am entertaining motives here. No, it spoils it all. You get it?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, sir. Keshav Reddy garu.
Pranam Swamiji.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to bring it to the notice, Swamiji and Mr. Vijayaraghavan, what I felt, how to motivate ourselves to be unselfish, selfless rather. Unless you see a Mahatma who is doing great service without any, doing service selflessly or unselfish, probably by observing them, by spending some time with them, you may get motivated, or something like that. When you see a Mahatma, probably that will give us some thought to act similarly, if not fully, now and then. Thank you, Mahatma.
Right, sir. Namaskar. Yes. Hariji.
Hari Om Guru.
Yes, sir.
Once we have started doing selfless action, I have graduated from unselfish to selfishness to unselfishness to selfless action. Once I have started doing that, will I be at all doing anytime selfish or unselfish action? If I have crossed the boundary of, you gave an example of 60% selfless action, 30% of unselfish and 10% of selfish. My question is, once I have started doing selfless action, at all can I come back to the unselfish or selfish zone?
To the extent you have evolved, you don't degrade thereafter.
Yeah, so then how can we have a mixture of selfless, unselfish, and selfish? I thought
because it's not black and white, no? It is not that I'm 100% selfish and 0% selfless, and in the course of my life, of spiritual life, I become 0% selfish, 100% selfless. It's not black and white. It is shades of gray. And if the transformation is through the passage of unselfishness, I repeat, if the passage of evolution is through the unselfishness, so selfishness starts dropping, unselfishness starts increasing, and slowly you will start marching into selflessness. So therefore, if a person is striving, most likely he gets more and more established in selflessness, and selfishness starts fading away. So it is always a combination. It's not that your actions are 100% selfless, and 100% selfless only a person who has, perhaps you can say, a man of realization performs 100% selfless actions, because he He's in fact transcended that. He's transcended the very bondage itself. But when your goal, ultimate goal is only self-realization, in that perhaps that stage alone you perform selfless actions. Right? It is always a percentage, relative. It's not absolute.
Okay.
Okay, it's relative, sir. Okay. Okay. I'll take up Kamalji. Yes, and then I'll come to Totagaru. Yes, sir. Yes, Kamalji, you can speak, please.
Yeah. So I was just trying to, I have 2 points. One, you were just mentioning about that. One example is like when we become selfless, we are still in this world, Vyavharika world, and like we call Jivan Muktas, they are self-realized, but they still have some element of selfishness, but it is very less. The dominant your nature is still selfless, because when you are living, you still have some self-related duties you have to do, although they are very minimal. Only when Demukti happens, then only you are 100% selfless. Second,
before you go ahead, sir, I would like to comment here. A person who's attained Jivan Mukta means a person who's attained realization even when you're alive. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but to keep himself alive, he will have some.
No. The moment you say a person has attained realization, he is liberated. The person, the reason why they are still, why is it that they have not attained the Videha Mukti? Why is it that they not left this embodiment? Is because of the Prarabdha Vasanas which they have started with. That is the reason why they carry on. So thereafter the life, let's say, sir, a man attains realization, a person attains realization at the age of 40, example, and the person lives for the next 30 years. And at 70, he attains Videha Mukti, he leaves his embodiment. What the Shastra says is that 30 years of his lifespan, he has lived a life of a man of realization. But why has he lived 30 years? Because of the vasanas, the prarabdha vasanas which he's acquired at birth, they are getting burnt out. So he has no say thereafter in the course of life he leads. No say in the matter. It is he's just going by the momentum he's acquired at birth.
That's true. But even during burning of those prarabdhas, karmas, the actions what he is performing, there will be some element of self which he will burn because he's not
it's like autopilot, sir. The pilot is not there, the flight is still cruising altitude, autopilot. He doesn't do anything. He switched off completely. Autopilot mode. Prarabdha vasanas after realization from Jivan Mukti to Videha Mukti is autopilot mode. There is nothing that he does. Technically speaking, he's attained realization at birth. I had to clarify this because you said there is an element of selfishness. No, if there is an element of selfishness, then you're not attained the self.
No, I was just saying that 100% selfishness, like black and white, that point, I was trying to highlight that it's the dominant factor is that only.
Fair. Yes, sir.
Another point I wanted to clarify was about you had mentioned about the intellect.
Yes.
And obviously my ignorance is there. I have not attended your previous classes, but in this verse also, when it says about yoga, and yoga is like defined multiple ways, like in Gita also, in chapter 2. One way is obviously like you're equipoised to both positive and negative conditions. Another one was that your harmony is built between your mind and intellect, and you can't. The way I understand is the self-realization can be only achieved when your intellect and heart both are in harmony. You can't just achieve only through intellect only. Yeah. So basically, you will not be, if you are at that evolved stage, you will not be reacting to emotions, because your heart and your mind and intellect are quite in unison.
Yes, yes. In fact, spiritual path has three avenues. When actions are predominantly done by the intellect, you're a jnani. When your actions are predominantly driven by the mind, you are a bhakta. When there's a balance of head and heart, then you're a karma yogi.
Right.
No? So, and every individual has got the head, heart, and the combination classifies each one into different categories of karma, bhakti, jnana based on your proportion. So you have element of karma, element of bhakti, and element of devotion, jnanam in you. So using your proportion, you can evolve.
Right.
So it's not necessary that if a person is predominantly jnani, you can't complain him for that. He is born with that constitution. If a person is predominantly bhakta, you can't blame him for that. But there is other balance; it always compensates.
Right. Right. Definitely.
Because that is his constitution. Okay.
Yeah. And also it will depend, because each individual may find more easier some path and other path. It may become later on easier. As you mentioned, they're all integrated eventually.
Yes. 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 Okay.
Thank you.
Right, sir. Yeah. Hari Om. Yes, Totagaru.
I have a difficulty following your thought that it's not your obligatory dharma. If something is around you is going on that can affect your conscience, like the pandemic, the rage that is occurring in India at this time, or war in Middle East, or war in Africa, or some other places. Are you saying that we do not have any obligatory duty? Can we contribute to the solution?
If
what
you
is
can contribute,
obligations?
What is my obligation? Now, sir, now the pandemic has overwhelmed or consumed our thoughts. But even beyond the pandemic, there's so much suffering out there. Correct. Even in this pandemic, countries are short of going at war at each other. There's so much of bitterness. There's so much of poverty, sorrow, suffering. It's just, COVID is just added to that total mess. One isn't it?
There is always something going on around us. Always.
Therefore, I'm glad you're thinking and cooperating with me. So, if is something going on out in the world throughout my life, what should my obligation be? Just sit and wait and see which part of the society needs my help and run towards it to rectify it or uplift it, or identify with my calling and be true to my nature. What would you advise, sir?
Well, I understand the point, but the conscience that a person has can play a role here.
It indeed plays a role. Sir, if I am not mindful of my dharma, and if I'm not true to myself, then my conscience will prick. And if I can sum up my answer, I am not engaging in social work, but I'm engaging in creating social awareness. I'm instilling that social awareness in each one of you to do your dharma, rather than me just doing social work. How I can impact community by doing social work vis-a-vis how I can impact by creating social awareness. There's a world of difference. What I can achieve in doing social work in my individual life, in my individual efforts, that much I can serve. But if I can mobilize 40, 50, 100, 200 people in creating the social awareness of touching and transforming lives in whatever way you think is right. I'm creating that spark in each one of you. Which is better, sir? Social work or social consciousness?
Awareness, obviously.
So I am being true to myself, for which I have to sit, I have to do sadhana, I have to evolve so that I can touch and transform lives of others. Therefore, I think I'm being true to myself, sir. So I can stand up and say, I'm sorry, I can't be of help because that's not my obligation. My obligation is to create social consciousness. Sitting here, if I can impact your life there, and if I can create a spark, I think I'm true to my conscience. I think I've done my part. In what way you can transform the society, in whichever way you can, that is your prerogative. But has my act helped your thought, has molded your thinking? And that's been my effort. That has been the effort, how this wisdom can transform lives of people. And which, knowing well that it is my dharma, I'm just being true to myself, that's all. But taking that example further, let's say I'm going on a highway and I see a deserted stretch of a highway and somebody's car has broken down and somebody is struggling to fix his wheel. And let's say, especially an elderly lady, she's struggling to fix her wheel and she's driving alone. And it's getting late into the evening. I can't say, oh, my job is only to create social awareness. I will not do any social work. I will not be helpful. And I just drive by. Certainly my conscience will prick. Because there I have an obligation to at least pull my car over and say, madam, can I be of any help to you? She may say, no, thank you. I'm fine. I can manage it. Then I've done my part. But at least I should accommodate the thought. So whenever somebody knocks at your door, see in what way you can be of help. These are special obligated duties. Like, I don't want to mention names, but I was a visitor to a celebration or an occasion of a project they were embarking, and they wanted me to come and do a little puja, Bhumi Puja they call, they're doing some construction. It's an organization, a charitable organization, which is doing great service. And a message that came to me that they're in dire need of help because of the pandemic and the situations. There was an uncalled trigger in me of an obligation. Not that there was some patronage being sought, but something told me, is there anything I could do? So just what little could be mobilized, what little could be contributed. I didn't do that to appease my conscience because I just did it because I have an obligation. But would that become my primary obligation? No, it was a special obligation. I felt it was right to honor it. It was honored. And I'm on to my mainstream. So my mainstream is this, but there will be special obligations that keep coming your way throughout your life journey. But my obligation is to create social awareness, but yet I would do wherever required to do social work, I would do, but that is not my primary obligation. So you have to find out what is your primary obligation and what way you can serve the society and do your dharma and be true to yourself and uphold your conscience. And if each of us do that, I don't think we are wrong. Okay,
how do we know that what is our dharma and what is not?
Your intellect, if it takes a wrong decision, your conscience will prick. If your intellect takes a decision and your conscience supports it, then you're not wrong. So you got to deliberate first at the intellectual level. Intellect decides, is it my duty? In what way am I obligated? Am I obligated, if at all? In what way? So when you deliberate all this, there is a reaction from the conscience. And this is the only way you will not get into an action which is not your dharma. Otherwise, you may easily slip into something on emotion-based. So it's not an emotion-based, it's a very conscious-based course of action. Okay?
Thank you.
Please think over it, sir. Come back if anything. I know GBK Raoji, you want to say something? Yes, please. I'm afraid I keep saying this because we have overshot if you could be a little
Namaskar.
concise, sir. Namaskar.
Jai Gurudev.
Yes, sir. Namaskar.
As parents, it's our duty to take care of our children. All our desires, whatever is there, we don't, we sacrifice everything and do so much towards children. Once the children are well established, they are fine, everything is okay. Still, if you are earning only for them, not looking either what the efforts you are making, the efforts others are making, or pandemic or anything, if you don't contribute, that is where that is self-realization is starts. That why should I earn only for my children? Why not I contribute now? This is the time, they are well established. Let us do either money or time, anything, whatever you can do. That is the realization. As Vasudeva Kutumbam, that realization, when it comes, naturally you are happy as others also as your children. That realization should come. That is why our Sanatana Dharma says Vasudeva Kutumbam. It affects you if you see the sufferings outside, if you don't contribute.
Very true, sir. Very, very true. We want to increase our circle of identification, make our family larger.
That's
right. Thank you.
Jai Gurudev.
Yes, sir. Namaskar. Sriniji, sorry, I promised you that I will explain the second half of the verse where he says, why does he call Balavat, Unmattavat? And there's another word referred, which is not in the context here, Pishachavat.
Correct.
So I'll have to come back next week, sir. We are overshot. Now, I remember we said we'll get into it, but we couldn't. We'll come back to it. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for your patience. Thank you. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purna Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om